You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to The Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, January 14th show. I'm here to help you build a strong financial blueprint 1 week and one show at a time. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast. You can call the show at 1-855-400-1150 to talk with the guests I have in studio or anything that you'd like to chat with your host about, or you can go online to themoneyhour.com. Right now in studio, Jeff Dickinson with ReMax on the Lake, being a competitive buyer in today's market. Jeff, thank you for joining me back in studio.
Always great to be here, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. A little bit about Jeff. Over the years, Jeff has been involved in the development of apartments, office buildings, residential condominiums, and self-storage facilities. His real estate practice includes extensive buyer and seller representation of residential properties throughout the Puget Sound region. Jeff is also the founder and director of ReMax Home Advantage Program, one of the most successful real estate teams. The primary focus is on corporate employee representation with over 90 corporate clients, including Boeing, UW, King County, City of Seattle, and Harborview Medical Center. He has had to be the best of the best to get into corporations like this, and that's why I've invited him into studio. So, Jeff, excited to talk about real estate and what's happening, and to help our buyers that are listening right now, and also any sellers that are listening, to hear behind the scenes the strategies that the buyers are doing to compete and win in today's market. So, Jeff, today's home buyers seem to be getting even more frustrated with the real estate market. Talk a little bit about what's causing this.
Yeah, there is a fair amount of frustration out there, especially in the core areas of, say, Seattle and Bellevue, where, like if I'm on the listing side, I've got to call the 14 other buyer's agents to give them the bad news that they didn't win the offer. And so when a buyer does that over and over again, it can be a little bit frustrating, for them. So lack of inventory is the big driver, combined with a lot of buyers. The stats are showing that we're 100,000 new housing units behind where we need to be. So it's just causing this real problem. So as I say, it's like going to Nordstrom and only having two dresses to choose from versus 50 or so we had a few years ago. So
yes, two dresses, and one is a 2 and one's an 8, and you wear a 5 or 4.
Exactly.
So Jeff, with the home buyers need to adapt to these conditions in order to be successful. So how are you coaching?
Well, I see so many unprepared buyers out there that they're just they're going out, they're going through the motions, they're not fully underwritten or pre-approved. So that's certainly a place to start. 2 is form your home buyer team. Get an agent that you can work with and work as a team. Don't put the blame on one or the other. Just work together, strategize. If we didn't win an offer this time around, sit down at Starbucks, figure out what the dynamics were, why we didn't win, and what can we do differently going forward.
And we're seeing a lot of offer review strategy being used by many of the sellers. So can you talk and explain a little bit about this?
Definitely. So a big strategy that's been employed the last 2 or 3 years is this offer review strategy. So let's take a Seattle house. A seller puts the house on the market on a Wednesday, does an open house on the weekend, and does an offer review of all offers Monday at 6 o'clock. So another part of the strategy is that typically the listing price is below market value, just to create this frenzy.
Yeah.
So at 6 o'clock on Monday, there might be 10 offers. You might get 1 or 2 offers at list price, and then usually you'll get maybe 1 to 4 well above list price, and that's really who the seller is going to sit down and review those offers with.
So, Jeff, with this competitive market that we're in right now, can you share some of the strategies that you're using with your buyers to win and be that winning offer?
Well, one of the biggest things, if you look at it from the seller's standpoint, they want the most amount of money for their house. So that's probably the biggest. You've got to be willing to step up to the plate and pay the price. Two is putting as large of earnest money down as you can. So when a seller is reviewing these competitive offers, they're going to be looking at purchase price, they're going to be looking at your down payment, who the lender is, and oftentimes the winning offer is pretty compelling. It's clearly in black and white in front of us. Little gray area. Other things, using a local lender versus an out-of-state lender, having the lender call the listing agent to tell how wonderful you are. And Tina, you do a great job at this.
Thank you.
So, and not a lot of lenders do that. So keeping your contingencies to a minimum. We're seeing financing waived. We're seeing home inspection waived. I've even seen some purchase agreements that seems like half of it's all crossed out.
Yes,
so it's there's some real aggressive buyers out there.
So with the aggressive buyers and talking about the contingencies, so you'd mentioned earnest money, increasing your earnest money. And in a normal market, there's really not a lot of risk to that because you've got the contingencies. The earnest money is going to go directly towards the cost of purchasing your home, your down payment. But now, it's just you mentioned, there's so many contingencies just being crossed out and waived. So do you have any concerns for buyers in making these aggressive offers? And how do you counsel through that or get them prepared to understand what they're doing with that contract?
Yeah, it definitely requires some coaching because it is a bit scary out there to go and purchase a $800,000 home with without the right to do a home inspection or sewer scope. So we'll do a couple things with that. Some of the lenders that we'll use will actually ask them to go put a letter together to the seller, just stating that as a condition of the loan that we have to do a sewer scope.
Okay,
that's been pretty effective.
Okay,
the last year that I've been employing that, and other times we're just going to have to either do a pre-inspection on it, just find some way if the buyer just needs to have that contingency satisfied.
Makes sense.
Yep.
So, Jeff, we talked about the higher down payment, and it's frustrating on the mortgage side. It's you have to adapt to the market, obviously, but financially, especially with the rates being so low, people that have that kind of money to put in the larger down payments, it just doesn't make as much sense financially because of the money that they could actually earn and compound and grow. So it's limiting the community, the options that they're having as far as what makes sense, because you want their offer to be strong. But what about the low down payment buyers? They don't have any options. I mean, they need to take advantage of the FHA loan at 3.5% down payment. And then that's a whole nother conversation in dealing with an FHA buyer versus conventional, not as competitive there. So how are you helping those buyers win?
It is pretty tough for a VA or an FHA buyer, but I am seeing them win some offers. Probably the biggest thing is that writing that personal letter to the seller, going on to Facebook, going on to LinkedIn, and getting an understanding of who that seller is. They might have some commonality. Maybe they're both Boeing engineers. They may be nurses at the University of Washington. That goes a long ways, especially if you're up against another offer. Another similar offer, let's say in price, oftentimes that personal letter to the seller will win.
Okay. So, Jeff, with the sellers really looking obviously at the highest price and what they're going to be able to net and take away, how does a buyer justify their offer price so that they're not overpaying for that house? I mean, I know a lot of buyers are just going in and they know they're overpaying for the house. They just want to get the house and they're willing to overpay. But how are they justifying? Well,
yeah, you have to have a buyer. You have to be in that right frame of mind to overpay. Are you going to live in the house for 10 years? What are you going to do with it? Does it need extensive remodeling, which we're seeing a lot of right at the moment? Sellers are getting away with murder. But I think sitting down with your agent, having your agent do a market analysis and giving you a range of where this house should be. It's not a tell-all, but it helps.
Yeah. So let's go back to contingencies. You talked about waiving inspection contingency, maybe, with being able to do a pre-inspection. What about finance contingency? What are you seeing? Are majority of your buyers waiving their finance contingency or no?
It really depends on where we are. If we're in Puyallup or Auburn or Marysville, that finance contingency is still hanging in there.
Okay.
But if we're in Seattle and Bellevue, you're waiving everything. So, finance, appraisal even, home inspection. So,
I know. So some of the crazy things I'm seeing is, $30,000, $40,000 earnest money, waiving finance contingency, willing to pay, $50,000, $75,000 over what the value of the home comes back in. Yeah.
If they're lucky.
Yeah, it's craziness. So, Jeff, talk a little bit about your amazing corporate program, and for somebody that a buyer that's listening to the show, because you've got a lot of great benefits. What can they do to get their corporate on your corporate program?
Well, we're always looking for companies, especially those that have 50 to 1,000 employees, to come on board our Home Advantage program. So there's some nice discounts for buying and selling real estate. We have the part of our program is the Boeing contract. So Boeing employees actually get up to 1% rebate or reduction in listing fees. So it's a huge benefit. We assist about 1,000 Boeing employees throughout the Puget Sound every year, so it's a big program.
Well, that's great, Jeff. So anything last to share with anybody that's listening that's thinking of buying and selling in this, our new year here?
I know, it's crazy.
It is crazy. I was going to say our coming new year, but we're in it.
We're in it.
It's here.
Yeah, absolutely. Out of necessity for my own buyers, I put together what I call a buyer competitive offer menu, and it's a 2 or 3 page piece I would love to share with your listeners. They could call in and we could send them a PDF copy of the worksheet. So.
Thank you, Jeff.
My pleasure.
Well, I appreciate you coming back into studio, and thanks for sharing your expertise with our listeners and all the hard work you're doing out there in our local market selling real estate.
Thank you so much, Tina.
Coming up next on the Money Hour, do you love wine? Well, we're going to talk lifestyle properties in wine country. Maureen Nolan, owner, broker of Lakeshore Realty West, right here on 1150 AM, KKNW, after this short break.